This podcast is hosted by Sheza Barbour, co-founder of Good Tree Institute, and joined by licensed therapist Archie Aquino and our resident scholar and founder, Dr. Nadia Qatranji.
Welcome to another episode of Timeless Conversations with Good Tree Institute. Right now, we're going to jump right back into the story of Surah Yusuf, and where we're at is when the brothers go to Yusuf, and Yusuf actually reveals himself to them that he is actually Yusuf. So, Dr. Nadia, why don't you kick us off where we left off?
Yep. Assalamu alaikum. So, if you guys recall, when we were talking about Yusuf alayhi salam and his interaction with them, this is the third time he has an encounter with his brothers, and this is the time where they come. And actually, let me just go from here. This is where they enter, right? They enter onto the Aziz. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ قَالُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الْعَزِيزُ. When they entered unto Yusuf, and they spoke to him. And I just to recollect, when they were with their father was in a very dire situation, knowing that he lost also his other Benjamin, and also the oldest brother didn't come. So he was in a very tough situation, but he still asked them, go take action, go look, go find a way. They came and they were in a need. They just were cornered. They didn't know what to do. So it's kind of like at this point where you can't take any new action. There is nothing for you to do. This is where they're at. So look what they did. There's something here new that they did. And we want to distinguish that. They said, قالوا يا أيها العزيز. They said, oh, you the Aziz, مسنا وأهلنا الضر, has touched us. مسنا has touched us, وأهلنا, and has touched our family. الضر. الضر from darar, which is the harm, the adversity. We're really in a tough situation. So what's the ضر? What adversity has touched them? Well, I mean, you could talk about it from the perspective of, okay, we lost so many of our family members. They're missing. They're alluding to their brothers. And there's the adversity of, there is a famine, and they are really in a need for help in terms of provision. So they kind of like, it can be both of these. So they said to him, we're really in a very tough situation. We are having we are in an adversity. وَجِئْنَا بِبِضَاعَةٍ مُزْجَاةٍ. And on top of that, we came بِبِضَاعَةٍ. Bida'a is the good. Muzja, it's of a little value. Something that it's kind of like, zaja is to push something. It's kind of like something that we're shy to actually bring. We're shameful about. وَجِئْنَا بِبِضَاعَةٍ مُزْجَاةٍ. But we have nothing else but that. So we came with something that's really not so much of a value, and we're not proud of, but that's all what we have for them to basically trade for their goods. So look what they said. فَأَوْفِ لَنَا الْكَيْلِ. So fulfill the measure for us. وَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْنَا. And be charitable. Sadaqah, remember the word sadaqah it comes from saying the truth. And that's why charity is sadaqah, because it's really proving you're actually being true to what you say. You're taking care of others. You're being charitable. So they said, be charitable unto us. وَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْنَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْزِي الْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala definitely rewards and compensates those who are charitable. So what did you notice here about the brothers? There's something here that started to shift about the brothers. What did you notice in their language? And I would love to hear from you guys, Archie and Sheza. How are you hearing these? We're just kind of like, as we're reading these, there's something there that's showing in the surah that we would love to, in the ayah that we would love to highlight. What's different about how they were speaking?
They're kind of being really blunt and not trying to. They're not really being. If they're trying to bargain for something, they're kind of putting too much on the table. Like they're being very honest about the value of things not being so great, and that's kind of different because they were always trying to come at people with an angle and manipulate the truth and they have an agenda before, but it just seems now that they're so beaten down or tired or something that they're just
Yeah.
this is just what it is, man. This is what I got. It's nothing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
There's definitely an element of humility here. Like they're being a little bit more raw and vulnerable than they've ever been.
Exactly. That's beautiful. And this ayah shows it so beautifully. And this is, by the way, a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they did this. Because you could still be stubborn and you could still insist and hide everything and keep the facade and keep showing that everything is fine and all of that. But you have the option when you're cornered, because that's what happened to them. They were really cornered. And what happened is that they actually became raw. They became real. They just put it out there. And I remember for myself, there were times where I feel stuck and I feel that whatever I'm doing is not working. And you know, when you kind of like use your identity, use your strength and use your capacity and use your intellect, and everything is failing you. And you get stuck, like you feel you're bumping up against everything. And it was just like, to me, it's like, what should I do? What can I do? And it never dawned on me. It took a while for me to really realize that all what I needed to do is just be real. Just be real. Hey, this is what's going on. I'm just gonna say what's happening. And subhanAllah, just having that key, Ya Rabbi, the difference that it makes with your relationship with Allah when you come to Him being real, or with people. Hey, I'm not going to pretend anymore. This is what's happening.
It's kind of like surrendering to the truth. It's just, I'm just going to put it out there. This is it.
Yep. That's so true. So when they said this, look what happened afterwards. So Yusuf responded, قال هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون. He said, did you know what you have done with Yusuf and his brother as you have been ignorant? When you were, at times when you, and look how polite he was. He was just like, yeah, when you were really ignorant, when you were young and you were just doing things that are not so appropriate. Did you know what you have done with Yusuf and his brother when you were at the times when you were really not behaving the best way possible? You were ignorant. You were just operating from a space of ignorance. He's very polite of how he actually identified what they did. So what do you notice about Yusuf and how he responded?
Well, it's very gentle. He brings up the story of himself, right? And he talks to himself as the third person. Did you remember what you did to Yusuf? And he doesn't come out saying, well, I am Yusuf. And, I don't know, and go on with a monologue about it, about what you did. It's, he still, comes at it from like the third person perspective.
Yep. He's still not fully identify himself. They say in the books of tafsir, some of them say that he had some kind of sign on his forehead that was covered by his crown, and he kind of like allowed that to show a little bit. That's what
I didn't even know
say.
He had a sign. That's kind of sounds like Harry Potter-ish.
Yeah, a little Harry Potter scar right there.
That's what some of them say. But maybe when he said this, because when he said this, they actually picked it up. They said, قالوا أئنك لأنت يوسف. Oh, by God, you're Yusuf. And then he said, أنا يوسف. قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي. I am Yusuf and this is my brother. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored unto us. Going back to what you said, Shaza, and even with the books of tafsir, that's what they say. It's like when Yusuf alayhi salam sensed their vulnerability and sensed how real they were, he actually opened up. He felt there was a room for them to listen now, to see something. It's different now. Their being is different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. They're
I
more
can
open.
see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took something, right, for them to come to this point. Because if you go back, let's just take a moment and go, we didn't finish the ayah, but I think it's a good point now to kind of like show the sequence of events of how their interaction with each other happened after he became the Aziz, the Aziz of Egypt. So it started by the first encounter that happened was when they met, remember, and he recognized them and they didn't recognize him. And he put them in this dilemma. Remember, he created this third person dilemma, third person, like he was operating as a third person, and he put them in the same situation that they had in the beginning. And he said, bring your brother. The fact is, he just said, bring your brother. But for them, what they heard, to them, they heard just like we have to ask our father. To them, it's like, asking our father, though, was not something straightforward. It triggered something for them. And it meant, if you recall, we talked about this, and it meant that we're just actually having to do this again. We have to relive. We can't, this is extremely hard for us to relive it. Yeah. And why it was something that's so bad is because what this meant is that that is very uncomfortable. And this is the situation that we try to avoid. I don't want to live something that was wrong for me, that didn't go well, that I'm going to look bad in. I just don't want to live that. So and notice how the buildup of it was. So Yusuf, the encounter with Yusuf started there. And then the next part, with the second encounter, he just carried on with it. He made it even worse. If you recall, when he took his brother, the second encounter that happened is that he took Benjamin. Mm-hmm. We are keeping your brother. What did they hear? Again, that we have to go and inform our father. And that interaction is bringing back again
trauma.
The trauma, because if you recall, for them, they did this whole thing to get their father's attention, but actually that didn't happen. What happened is their father went more into mourning over Yusuf, and he kept away from them. So they didn't fulfill their intention. All what they reaped out of this whole endeavor that they did in the past is that their father was suffering, and they suffered even more. They didn't get what they wanted. They didn't get the attention.
Yeah.
Backfired.
So backfired. Yep. So same thing, the second encounter was still building up that whole concept. It was building up. So for them, again, it's like we are cornered. And it was so looking bad. Notice it's that uncomfortableness and that looking bad, the thing is that they were put in, and people usually try to avoid this. But when you go through these is actually what led to the third one. When they were taken through the work that Yusuf did with them, that whole plotting that he did with them, when he had them go through it, is what built up to the third encounter, which we are witnessing right now. When they were like, there's nothing, we really don't know what to do next. And that's where, with the third encounter, they came and they just basically were real and honest. They were genuine and they were raw. And that allowed them to break from that cycle, from that blame, like things we're the victim, we have to do things to help us happen. And that's where they felt humbled. And they were able to say, we are wrong. Their perspectives have shifted, and they were able to say, we are wrong.
Third time's the charm. It takes time to break down that cycle, right?
Exactly.
For those that are really ingrained in it, and for those of us, if we do have our own cycles that we're ingrained in, it just takes time to redo that sort of brain work.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that it's important for us not to take this lightly. When we are going through something like this, when we are in a blame mentality and a victim mentality, or we feel that we're just like stuck in our circumstances and we don't know how to get out of it, you have to understand that it takes something to get out of it, and use the situations. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corners you, and when you're cornered in certain things, that's a way for you to actually break from it and be real. And also when you're seeing other people who are in this situation, who are in your life, that's where a lot of the times you have to learn to be gentle with people around you. It takes time. Yusuf alayhi salam, he walked them through this. Remember, he could have easily,
Yeah.
from the beginning, just crushed them. He could have crushed them from the beginning if he wanted revenge.
Yeah, I was surprised he
That's
didn't do
true.
that. Like he had all those years to figure this out and to really get at them. And he decided on doing it in a way that's not about revenge.
Yeah.
And even within the plot that he put together, right? Like there's still time that goes through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they have to go back to their father and come back. Like there is time element that's passing, and still once he finally shows, he has to be patient through that too, and through their transformation
Yeah.
to be able then to also be gentle at the moment of revelation, his revelation expose. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I'm speaking from my experience with myself and people around me when we do this concept through the Quran, and I know, Arsh, you have a lot that you can add to it, but really the core element here that we're highlighting is the aspect of giving people, being gracious with people and giving them time, just like what Yusuf did with his brothers. Because really, it can't be this. No matter how fast we want it to happen, sometimes it does take something for a person to shift. Because it's so comfortable to stay in this mentality. It's so easy.
Well, it gives you a false sense of control. You're trying to control the truth. You're trying to control how people perceive things, and it's hard to give up that sense of control for anybody, really, and just trust that
That's
people are going to
true.
perceive it the way they're going to perceive it, and it'll still work out okay.
Exactly. Until you're cornered. And you can actually, I mean, I've seen people who are just like, yeah, I'm cornered. I'm still continuing with that same mindset. You can keep going. Or you could say, you know what? I think that's it. I can see the pain. I can see the wrong, just like what they did. And I say, you know what? I'm going to just be real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, Nadia, can you pull up that slide again in the ayah and just kind of walk us through again that what they said? Because I think there's an element there that we should highlight is even that you started alluding to, is that they were about to say something and then they caught themselves. So there was an element
Yeah.
of, you know, of
Yes.
there's like a thought process that went through their head before they were totally
Totally.
like, okay, I give
Yes.
up here.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's look at it again. So the beginning here. So when he told them, did you, if we go back, so the aspect of them just being raw, this is where they were raw. It was like saying, we are really in a very dire situation. So really be generous with us and be charitable. And when he was real with them and he told them, do you know what you've done with Yusuf? And they said, yes, you are Yusuf. So they kind of like knew the truth. Let's finish the ayah and then we go to what you're talking about. So, and then that's what he commented and he said, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And this is what we're talking about. مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ. Definitely the one who is cautious and aware of Allah and always having taqwa and operating in life with, I am not going to do anything wrong. I am not going to go off of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to do. And yasbir, and has that endurance and perseverance and resilience and patience. And that's what Yusuf did, alayhi salam. He was able to carry along and to hold on despite those years and really just make the best out of what has happened. And even with his brothers, he was having sabr. He was having that endurance and patience. And that's where Allah says, Inna Allah la yudi'u ajra al-muhsinin. Fa-inna Allah, definitely Allah does not waste the payback or the reward of those who do good and beautiful. That's the hallmark of Yusuf. He was actually always operating with beauty, always operating with generosity, with the being that he was. So when they said that, look what they said. قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين. They came back and they said, oh, well, God has favored you for sure over us. For sure. Now we're very clear that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's not only our Father has favored you, Allah has favored you over us. And then they said, and we were wrong. وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ, and we're indeed wrong. Archie, you wanted to say
I just
something
think
here.
it's funny because these brothers crack me up. They're always doing the same thing. Everyone favors, everyone likes you better. It's like the
Exactly.
Brady Bunch, Jan and Marsha. They're always blaming someone favored Yusuf. Oh, now Allah's favoring Yusuf. Okay,
Yeah.
but then they caught themselves.
Yeah, and then they, exactly, and then they caught themselves. And what's so interesting is with this statement, what's so interesting about it is that it does have both of these concepts, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like you could see how that mentality is still overpowering them. It's still their default.
That's their
Yeah.
What
go-to.
they,
Yeah.
it's their go-to, just like it favored you, right? That's their language. But at the same time, they were able to see how they were like, oh, let's just go back. Well, actually, we were wrong. So kind of like it's as if they're learning a new language and their old language is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
mean,
what
it kind of
takes the
shows.
practice.
Yeah, change doesn't happen one time and you're good. Like it's you revert. You always kind of you go back to your old patterns, and you have to catch yourself every time.
Yeah, because I mean, as we mentioned before, this is something that you've been doing all your life, so you're just kind of so used to. When you learn, for instance, to drive to a certain place every single day, and you don't even think about it, you just go. And if you want to go somewhere else or a different direction, many times you might forget. Why? Because you're kind of like it's so built up for you. And that's the condition here. It was a huge opening that there was a shift in perspective. That's the biggest part. Like I saw a different way. Finally, there is actually a way out. But that doesn't mean that you're going to operate this way all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my question, I mean, to both of you, to Archie and Dr. Nadia, is like, when you do have that epiphany of like, I realize this is what I do. I blame and I have this cycle that I do to other people, right? How do you stay in that discovery mode where you're willing and open, right, to the opening that you've been given? Like you see with yourself what you're doing. How do you maintain that sense without reverting back to your old behavior and your old traumas? And this is, just that old cycle. How do you maintain that level of open discovery of like, how can I do this differently this time?
I think it takes a lot of maturity. It takes your reason for why you want to change has to be something very personal and meaningful so that you can stay open. Because if you're not really open to change or your reason for doing it is about something outside of yourself, really, like you're trying to, again, it's more manipulation than true internal
Yeah.
motivation, then I don't think you're going to be able to be consistent. Whereas if you are motivating yourself because you want to change for some growth, you want to increase your deen, you want to improve how you have relationships with people, then you'll be more committed to the mission of a process of change. It's not going to be just like this one-time thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I 100%. It's just like as you're talking, you reminded me of people who commit to working out and building your, body stamina. Why would you do that? Is because you're committed to have a healthier body and a healthier lifestyle. It's not simple. It's not what I mean. It's not like easy. A lot of times you don't want to go to the gym. A lot of times you don't want to go running. A lot of times you don't want to eat healthy. The reason you do that is because you have a commitment. So same thing here. It's way easier to go and default back to this muscle that has been working all the time and just like that rather than training a new muscle. It does take a lot of commitment to do that.
Do you guys have any like steps, recommendations, like steps to do or things to keep in mind to kind of work on this process?
Well, in counseling, there's a few that I use all the time. And one we covered already. You acknowledge what needs to be changed. Like you have to really own it. It can't be kind of half measure. It has to be a full measure of I do this bad thing that I don't like anymore and I want to change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you
Yeah. I
go
mean,
ahead.
I just, before you go to the next part, I just want to kind of like add to this point, because if you operate on this, it's like, I do my part, but you have to do your part. It doesn't work. Make a full, have a full ownership. Don't worry about what other people have to, what their part. Do yours. Own your power.
Yeah. Because
So that is, I just want to make sure. Yeah, go ahead.
like you're saying, if you split it up, then it's really still it's like conditional. It's not really 100% yours.
Conditional. Yeah. And also the other thing that I would want to say before you go into the actual steps, because remember, like, okay, you had the discovery, you saw that, and now you made a commitment, as Archie said, and you really want to own it. Now, the thing is that this is so default for you. So for me, what worked for me and how I work with people is just like, I tell people, just take a time to observe yourself. Just be an observer of your behavior. Catch when you are actually doing this. Notice without judgment. Don't make judgments about how you do it. Just notice how you go into that mode, how easy for you to get into it. Because the observation aspect is the first one. You have to see it. You have to analyze it. You have to see what it looks like, what it smells like, what it feels like. What are the things that precede it? All of that is so important for you. So you can actually start being able to get into taking a different action.
And I'd like to add on to that part of that is thinking back on what other people have told you. If you can think back and notice, hey, several people have told me similar things about myself. And at that time I was defensive and I didn't want to hear it. But if you really notice that throughout time people have told you the same kind of message, you have to be open to owning that there's something there that you need to work on.
I was just saying that it's kind of like your prep phase, and this is, don't underestimate it. This is so important. You have to be kind of like kind with yourself. Take your time. Don't judge yourself. Don't just like, oh my God, I'm doing this again. No, just understand it. Really, it's so important. The examination, observation of how you do things is so important, because it's going to give you access to doing something about it. Once you start seeing it so clearly, it's like as if you're examining somebody else. When you see so clearly, now you have an ability to say, oh, when it starts coming, I actually have an option to say something else. I have a choice to pause here and do it differently. And I think
Yeah.
this is where you would you have the recipe that you were talking about.
And this is a kind of new ability that I think it kind of develops later, when you're fully able to see yourself and not be like looking through a camera lens, but looking from above kind of thing. So instead of being so subjective, you're now able to see yourself
Exactly.
as an observer.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can do that, you can be more objective about how you understand what's happening, instead of being caught up in the first shooter perspective kind of a view of what's, and you're not so reactive. You can just say, hey, this is what's really happening in the situation, and I am doing that thing.
So then what do you actually do then? Then I'm hearing a lot of thought process, a lot of introspection, a lot of observation, but then when it really happens and you're in the moment, what do you do? Like, how do you
Well, that's
change
where
that
you still
default
have to
mechanism?
you have to do some prep work still. Dr. Nadia alluded to some preparation, and the preparation part is key, because you identify the problem behavior, and then you have to identify and define, what do you really want to be doing instead of the problem behavior? Like, what are you trying to get at? What is your goal?
Yeah. Yeah, like
And
have a plan. And I'm sorry, sometimes, you know what I did sometimes, in the aftermath, like you wouldn't catch yourself until after you did that blame again. And then you go back and you say, okay, well, what could I have done differently? And you could have somebody you could talk to with actually through this. If you were going with therapy, you could do that with therapy. Or if you're just like doing it with somebody who has that capacity, you could just like, okay, what could you have said differently? How could I have done this differently? And that gives you access. Oh, okay, well, I mean, I could have said this and this. That gives you an understanding. So next time, this is what I would do.
yeah, and I think it's
So
important
you kind of have a plan.
yeah, and what you're pointing at is learning from each time you don't do it right. Like, you have to be open to this process of, I'm not going to do it right every time, but every time I don't do it the way I want to do it, I have to learn something about how I able to go back to the old